Well, good evening, everybody. This is the moment that it's all been leading to the finale of SJJMAS 2025. And I'm here with Colin, Liddell, back to headline the show again. What a moment for you, Colin.
Yeah. Rather too many bagpipes there for my tastes.
Are you not a fan? Oh,
Not well. I am, and I
oh.
and and I'm not. I think you only need about one bagpiper, or else they need to be coming from a very very long distance away while you're kind of surrounded by a thuggy army.
Yes. What I did notice is that if you are searching for homogeneity, join a piping group. Did you notice?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if that's true anymore. Because I
Right.
think every year they have this big bagpiping thing in Glasgow, and they seem to turn up from all sorts of corners of the world.
Oh God. Well, that one looked pretty cool. I think this goes on at this time of year through Scotland, doesn't it? The Hogmanay and all that. So it
Yeah,
seemed
I think
appropriate.
in Scotland Christmas used to be illegal until about 1958, and so people tended to celebrate the New Year more than Christmas. But then in 1958, the Scottish people managed to overthrow the Presbyterian Church and gained their liberty.
Right. I did not know that. Did it literally used to be illegal?
Well, it wasn't a holiday, that's for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm
Well,
thinking, yeah, if you check that out, everybody can, in the chat they can check that out because we're busy doing the live stream. But I think it was in 1958 that Christmas actually finally became a holiday in Scotland. So it was kind of frowned upon.
that's fascinating. What did they used to do?
Well, it's kind of like a throwback to Cromwellian times, sort of.
Mm.
The Presbyterians, they thought that Christmas was a bit too pagan, a bit too jolly. People drank a bit too much, and they said you shouldn't be doing that. It's disrespectful to baby Jesus.
Of course, it doesn't say that to celebrate Christmas in the Bible at all. It is a bit paganized. I think that is correct. We only used to celebrate the Easter, I think, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, right?
Well, I was just thinking about Christmas recently, and Jesus was born in a manger, and manger is the same manger as in Pret a Manger, the popular fancy fast food place, and I think it means ready to eat. And so Jesus being born in a manger is symbolic of the later kind of Christian thing about eating his body and drinking his blood, which is a very Catholic kind of way of looking at Jesus.
Yeah, I always found that aspect of Christianity quite disturbing. I could never get my head around it. Eating the body of Christ and drinking his blood. I've been to one Catholic event in my time. They go on far too long. There's all that weird stuff going on, and that eating and drinking stuff.
Well, yeah, there is
It's
a
not
kind of nasty undercurrent of cannibalism in Christianity. So less said about that, the better, probably. At this time of year.
indeed, indeed.
Anyway,
Anyway,
I think
yeah.
Christmas was basically invented by the English, though. Really, that's what I think. They put all the pieces together. The plum pudding, the turkey. They got the tree from Germany, of course. Tiny Tim, Charles Dickens, all that kind of schmaltzy,
Sure.
all the schmaltzy details that people associate with Christmas. And, the Victorians did it. Charles Dickens obviously played a large part in it. And then it, just became another item of, British soft power to be exported around the world and, to enhance our power and empire.
Yeah, you are correct that all the Christmas tradition, all the Christmas decorations and that today harken back to Victorian times. It's like we're attempting to recreate that period. You're correct. To go back to A Christmas Carol. as if that was the perfect moment of Christmas.
Yeah, yeah. It is very conservative in that respect. It's like a revolt against the modern world, really. I mean, I prefer
I'd have,
Festivus. I don't know about you, but I prefer to call it Festivus. I mean, Christmas is just so old hat. It sounds kind of corny now.
yeah, I suppose. I feel like a I feel like a contrarian reaction to this Yule stuff, though, that the other guys on the the lesser show are putting on. They reject Christmas, so I feel like the need to like almost react against the reactors and like just go back to just celebrating Christmas.
Yeah, but that's a reaction to their reaction. So it's a reaction
Yes,
on
it
top of a
is.
reaction. So you just got to just make do whatever you want and don't worry about it too much. And if you want to call it Christmas or Festivus or whatever, Kwanzaa or Hanukkah, go for it.
Yes, I had a theory that Christmas was plonked in the middle of winter, actually. It's a bit of social programming to help us get through this miserable period of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. It is pretty bad, it's pretty bleak, but this festival is just perfectly put right in the middle of it. And once you've got Christmas out of the way, everybody kind of spends the time looking forward to Christmas. Everybody, kids look forward to their presents, the reason to be good in winter whilst they're shut up indoors in the houses and everything. And then by the time you've got Christmas over, the days are getting longer again, and we're heading, looking forward to spring. So it's perfectly timed for midwinter.
Yeah, it's a kind of reset button. You get all that out of your system, and then you're ready to go. You clear the decks, and you're into January. And that's sort of what happened last year. We went into January, and it was like full steam ahead. Really, wasn't it? Last January, because we had a new president coming in.
Well, this was the perfect segue to do our kind of year in review then, if you'd like to. So what do you have in mind about what happened in January?
I'd like to say that kind of Trump hit the ground running, but I don't really feel that's the right metaphor. It was like a big disgusting splatting sound when Trump landed with this. First of all, he issued a shitcoin to enable people to pay him enormous bribes, and then you
And
had
Melania.
the whole family, yeah, and then you had Elon Musk and uh, Doge and the chainsaw, and he was going to like save trillions in all this money that's been going missing over the years. And Trump was talking about invading everywhere, Canada and Greenland, and it was pretty weird and wacky and surreal time to be around January 2025.
Yes, I'll give you that. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. You have been particularly critical of Trump. I'm sure we'll get to lots of it. What did you think of the promise of Trump coming in to office then? Were you excited?
Well, no, I wasn't. Yeah, in a way, I was excited, but in a bad way. Let's say. I thought that he was going off the rails a bit. Because people had been apparently, we don't know about the full story. There's a lot of conspiracy theories. People had been shooting at him. He'd been up on various charges in court and civil suits against him, and there was they were talking about sending him to jail. And he looked very radicalized by all that. And then there
Yes.
was all this stuff about Project 2025, and also he seemed to have, even when he was out of the presidency, he seemed to strengthen his grip on the Republican Party. So all these Republican politicians, senators, congressmen, governors, whatever, they all became a bit terrified of Trump. They knew that he could primary them. And so they all started to kind of like bend the knee, and he was like this king in waiting. And so that was all going on. And then you had this pathetic display by the Democratic Party, where they tried to lie about Joe Biden in the hope that nobody would notice how kind of senile and just sort of sleepy and out of it he really was. And then a bit too late in the game, they brought on their super sub, who happened to be Kamala Harris, and she was just this black woman who laughed a lot, and that wasn't
Yes.
going to really work with the voter base, and so they were kind of handing Trump a victory on a silver platter. I felt, because his campaign was was actually a bit shit. I remember him in 2016. He was quite a good stump speaker. Yeah, he was quite witty. He was making good points. He was saying some things that probably needed to be said. But in the 2024 election, he just sounded like this shouty, angry, bored old man. I mean, I saw some of the speeches he gave, and people were kind of like leaving before he finished because he was going on too long, for one thing.
Yeah, I think part of it, they'd heard it all before as well. He's done so many of these. So there definitely was an element of that. There were a lot of repeating himself. You mentioned the assassination attempt of Trump. In hindsight, looking back at that, do you have any further thoughts on that? Did you ever go any conspiratorial about this, or that it was convenient, or I think it certainly handed him the election in, to.
I tend to take a kind of parsimonious approach to conspiracy theories. It's up to them to kind of like dig up the dirt and kind of prove something nefarious going on. And I don't really think anybody's done that. So I think somebody genuinely, like Charlie Kirk style, went up there on a roof and took a shot at him. And somebody did get killed. It wasn't Trump, obviously. It was somebody in the audience behind him.
Yes.
And maybe he got winged a bit. People, said a lot of things about his ear. You can. There's all sorts of theories about what happened there. But yeah, maybe he got nicked slightly. It was no more than a minor kind of shaving cut, and it was, probably his ear. Maybe his cheek. I don't know, a little bit of blood. But yeah, until somebody can come up with a convincing and plausible theory of what really went on, and he was being guarded by FBI people who were under the control of the Biden administration. So
Yes.
if it was a conspiracy, then I guess Joe Biden's people were in on it, which starts to make it sound a bit more and more doolally. So the deeper you go into it, and the more you try to connect up all the loose ends, the more absurd it becomes, I think. So let's just say that some young weird kid thought he could earn eternal glory by putting a bullet in the big pumpkin head of the orange baboon.
Yes. You have no good word for Trump, I can tell. We're gonna get there. Gonna get to that. I can, I can see it in everything that you say, though. But look, the assassination attempt is all the more weird, and I'm very grounded about all this. I like to think, compared to the circles that I run in, but it is more weird by the fact that we've heard nothing whatsoever since about that Crooks character after a whole year. So we've not found out a motive, anything. It's just like gone totally silent. So
Was he arrested or was he shot?
he was shot, counter
Yes,
sniper.
he's basically dead, isn't he? So dead man tell no tale. So how convenient, but how convenient for the conspiracy theorists as well.
True. Do you ever think that there is a game afoot in encouraging conspiracy theories that they actually help? Certainly, maybe a character like Trump. I'm looking back to the like QAnon and all this kind of stuff, and that like leaving things open ended allows the base to like draw their own conclusions.
Well, yeah, Trump is a bit of a conspiracist himself, isn't he? I mean, really, that's
Yes.
how he kind of got into politics. I think he was coming up with all these conspiracy theories about Obama not being born in America, and I don't know where all that went, but it is basically considered to be a conspiracy theory. But the QAnon stuff, I mean, there's a lot of you don't know where it's coming from a lot of the time. A lot of it is algorithm driven. It is, I think the algorithms feed upon certain types of people, and those types of people that the algorithms feed on are the ones who become obsessed by certain narratives, emotionally driven, psychologically driven narratives. And those are the algorithm can't do what it's doing all by itself. It needs to find a kind of base, an audience that it can infect and then radicalize with more and more content that kind of feeds their particular obsession or delusion. And then that creates the emotional energy that then can then be further redistributed through the system of social media and the internet. So there is, QAnon is a perfect example of that. So, you have people who have questions, who think there's there's Pizzagate going on. There's an evil network of people. There is actually an evil network of pedos. It's been slowly unraveled in the Epstein files. But they were going on about, Hillary Clinton was kidnapping babies.
Eating babies.
Well, she's kidnapping babies from Haiti and possibly eating them, and possibly selling them to pedophiles. And this is all going on in the basement, the non-existent basement of a pizza parlor in Washington. So, people don't really know how a lot of things work, and I guess that breeds a fair amount of resentment, and so they're open to negative ideas about politicians. They think politicians are basically screwing them over, and sometimes they're right. They are being screwed over to some degree by politicians. So they're ready to hear almost anything bad about politicians or about elites or about people in power. There's also a lot of displaced, let's call it, racial animosity, especially in a country like America. The Americans are very given to all sorts of conspiracy theories about the British. A lot of those conspiracy theories date back to, the Irish diaspora and to World War I, when, America joined the war in Europe, and the Irish community in America, which was massive, and the German community in America, which was also massive, were not too happy with that. And so they thought that Britain had this weird occult power to manipulate and subvert their political system, rather in the same way that maybe Israel seems to exert an undue influence nowadays.
Yeah, what do you think? Who do you think is the power behind the throne? Do you believe that there is a real power network like the conspiracy theorists believe? And who is it? Or do you believe in a cathedral type explanation, more like Curtis Yarvin proposes?
Well, I think we're kind of getting there now with these tech oligarchs, and because they do seem to have a lot of power to influence the narrative with burst with all these algorithms, with social media. Once you control that, once you control the mainstream media. And, as we're seeing that there's all these moves going on to buy up various media companies, and it all has to pass through this very centralized and radicalized Trump administration. So you're starting to get to a position where you have this, evil power elite. But luckily, it all hinges on Donald Trump, and he's going to be I think he's in his 80s now. He's not looking too healthy. He's looking increasingly out of it. He's like, Joe Biden on steroids, really, So the whole thing should hopefully fall apart. And so I would predict that it probably will fall apart. And you can't really call it the empire, but the empire will kind of strike back. The the previous liberal world order will, to some degree, strike back, I think. And Trump will make it easier for them because he's kind of toxifying uh, the right wing project that he's trying to impose. This sort of pseudo fascistic, some people call it, or at least authoritarian control of America. So he's making that whole project increasingly unpopular just by sticking his big, fat, ugly orange face on front of it.
Oh my God, bro. Well, you brought up the tech bros. I am bullish on tech. I am bullish on the future. People say maybe I'm just naive and maybe I'm just looking at it like through a selfish perspective, or maybe it's just that, I want to gamify my future and, succeed personally. And I see this opportunity, but I am bullish in, in the future that the technology can deliver for us. I know it's going to be very disruptive. And I am somewhat sympathetic towards letting these tech bros help dictate some of the, policy rather than it just be ideologues, because ideologues aren't necessarily any better. But what do you think? What do you think, first of all, about Elon Musk's contribution? He was a big impact in Trump getting elected. He was there in January at the inauguration and everything.
Yeah, I think he was important because without Musk throwing his weight behind Trump, there was the possibility that this rather weak version of Trump would have been defeated by the extremely weak Democratic candidates. I think Trump kind of owes him a lot. And he came in and I don't know, he just seems, he seems like he doesn't really seem to understand things very well. He takes things out of context. He's got a very kind of shrill mind. He gets overexcited about things that he doesn't really understand. And, who knows what's going on with him, because, his positions change. There's a lot of inconsistencies going on. I mean, you could put it all down to his intake of a certain substance. That might have a lot to do with it. That might be the best way to understand him. He is
what substance?
The ketamine, the horse tranquilizer.
Oh, okay.
So
yes, okay, yeah.
Who knows what else he's taken? So
Yeah.
there's something a bit off about Musk. He's obviously quite bright in some ways, but his fortune, it all stems from certain companies that really were dependent upon a lot of cooperation from the American government as well. So I'm not really sure if he's really proved himself as this genius businessman, because he's been competing in a very unusual environment.
Yes. I have mixed feelings on Elon Musk. Obviously, I called myself a Musk maximalist. It's getting harder and harder to wear that title. I'll admit it, but I can't think of anything else to change it to at the moment, so I've just left it. But
don't change it. Don't change it to teal maximalist. That would be even worse.
Well, we'll get there. But look, Musk maximalism is just about it was just like noticing that the will to power, that somebody who is willing to walk around and throw their dick around and put their balls on the table can actually wield action in the world, in the gamified world. And nobody can doubt that Elon Musk was doing this for better or worse, and I respect that element in nature and in society, even if it is to the total detriment. I kind of respect the player.
Yeah, but don't you think he just overextends himself?
Yes, I
I
do.
mean, he
Yeah.
starts off and he does one thing, and then he moves on. He does a completely different thing, and then he's doing two or three big projects all at once. And then he thinks he can reform the American government, and then he thinks he can start a political party. So he's constantly overextending himself. And I think even very bright people have a limited bandwidth. And once you start doing too many things, you're just making yourself into an idiot, essentially.
Yes, you're correct about that. 100%. Like I follow markets a lot for this year, and Tesla shareholders were like in despair for a good part of the year when he was getting involved with Doge and everything. But he does seem to have overcome that. I mean, there was a part of the year where like Teslas were being attacked and set on fire for his involvement in the government. The shareholders couldn't understand why he was getting it too involved in politics, but he seems to have come through it. And to me, it does, at the very least, imply his like autistic honesty, the fact that he would do this kind of thing to the detriment of his companies.
Yeah, I mean, these tech bros are a bit like AI itself. I mean, they're a little bit weird, a bit too logical in a sometimes a good way, sometimes a bad way. And so they give us a kind of foretaste of what AI might ultimately be like when it starts to really, develop legs of its own. So I do think we've got to really rein in these people. I mean, there is a tendency for them to accumulate a bit too much money, a bit too fast, and a bit too much power, a bit too fast. And this is becoming a bit of a problem, something to worry about. And we do need to decentralize some of the power that is being tech and by this select group of super tech billionaires.
Well, I appreciate that perspective. What I put to you, Colin, is because you are definitely somebody who is aware of the geopolitical risk of like an emergent China and that sphere of the world gaining displacing maybe the American hegemon. Is it even possible for us to like rein in the tech at this stage with the potential for AI going forward? There's a lot of people who have this perspective that we need to put controls, we need to put brakes on it. There's an entire doomer crowd who believe that AI will like destroy the world. There's that Eliezer Yudkowsky who's recently written a book called "If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies." I have come to the I've come to question if these people who are like in the doomer crowd are even actually sincere or perhaps even useful idiots of Russia and China, because if America doesn't build it, and I would use the collective we as in like the West, if the West, but it does mean America. If America doesn't build it first, then China certainly will. And so it's like, the worst of two evil. Which is the worst of the two evils?
Yeah, there's a certain sense in that, because like America was, if you go back in history, America was very much a small government country. And during the course of the 20th century, due to various world wars and the Cold War and the collapse of other countries like the British Empire and so on that could kind of maintain the balance of power, America was kind of forced to become this superpower itself. It was forced to develop a big military, a big public sector, and that was kind of in contravention to its kind of rather small-minded, um, inward-looking ethos before. This is America was very much a kind of isolationist country by nature, but during the course of the 20th century they were forced to be this kind of expansionary big government country. And you could say that maybe something similar is going on now, because you have these very authoritarian, highly centralized states with Xi Jinping, who's made the Chinese Communist Party even more centralized than it was before, with Vladimir Putin, who's centralized all power in Russia, so that this kind of farce of Russia pretending to be a democracy is completely absurd and ridiculous now. So this is something that America, or probably also Europe, might have to react to. And in order to counter that, you have to become like that. So America has to become more centralized. It has to have a stronger concentration of power, and it has to compete, like you say, with the AI or whatever other weaponizable technology that the Chinese or the Russians are developing. And so America's forced to become an authoritarian country. But the problem is they've picked this complete buffoon, this kind of complete, orange clown to, I mean, he's not on the same level as somebody like, I mean, whatever you think of Putin, and I think Putin's a complete, turd, or Xi Jinping, these are very highly competent, intelligent people who know how to, deal with all sorts of people in all sorts of ways. And Trump isn't on that level at all. So this is not the person to make this strong new America that can stand up to a rising evil China, say, or a kind of Putinist Russia. So, and of course, Europe is in a probably even a weaker state. Europe, it would be very, very difficult for Europe to centralize power and to make these kind of, realpolitik decisions that you're kind of implying with AI.
Yeah, I am concerned. If I have one worry about the Trump administration, it is their leaning into, well, for one, it's the seemingly soft approach to Russia and what they're doing in Ukraine, and I'm sure we'll speak about that soon. But the other thing is this pulling back, this re-emergence of this isolationist tendency. It's making me look at America and, say that I, for one, am grateful for America's role in the world. I am an Atlanticist, I think, basically. I mean, did you see this meme I created, with Dugan in? I think I think I did well here with this one, where people are, Trump and J.D. Vance and that are all calling for what they call America first, American isolationism, but really America's enemies definitely want this. They want America to withdraw from the world stage. They want the multipolar world. It's like they're clapping their hands for this. Yes, retreat, America first. They'll be loving this idea.
Yes, that's a nice meme. It's very accurate. American isolationism, America first. Even if they focus on their own hemisphere, basically it's a green light to Russia and China to run amok, really. And that's not going to end well because, the Russians are highly incompetent, even though they're quite brutal and they don't mind killing people or losing their own people. But they're not very efficient at taking over the world, so it's not going to be a smooth process. And the Chinese too. I think they could get into trouble. They have large neighbors that would deeply resent them becoming more powerful than they already are. The Japanese, for one, the Indians, even the Vietnamese, who kind of gave them a bloody nose in 1979. So, I can see, what the isolationists will get will be a world in chaos, really. So there is some necessity for America to kind of stay involved, at least until either Russia collapses or China changes its tune.
Are you an anti-neocon, Colin, or do you have any sympathies for the neocon project? I know it's all wrapped up in Israel, and in many ways it was doing Israel's bidding in the Middle East. But like just the general principle of that there are these basket case countries in the world, still post the World War II order. They're, countries, have to be brought to heel by somebody. Otherwise, they're going to be constantly invading each other. And like you had Saddam Hussein invading Kuwait, and he just had a war with his neighbors, etc. What do you think about all that?
Well, I think we had a fairly decent working global order for most of the post-war period, and that even included when the Soviet Union was around. And I think the neocons kind of shat the bed, in my view, because even though America should be involved in the wider world for various, not just altruistic reasons, also it benefits them in lots of ways. Even though America should be involved in the wider world, they really ruined that. I think the neocons, because what happened was they they sort of became too biased over the question of Israel, and they over supported Israel, and then Israel kind of broke all the rules. So there was supposed to be a kind of like uh, a rules order, a rules based order in the world, and basically invading other countries was bad, bombing the shit out of other countries was bad. If you did those things, America, NATO, some other countries would tap you on the shoulder and say, no, you can't do that, get back in your box, like we did with Saddam Hussein and so on.
Yes.
So a lot of countries were aware of that. They thought, I better be careful, I better not go fly off the handle here. But Israel realized that they could get away with it. And the fact that America was letting them get away with it displayed that there wasn't really a rules-based order. And so that sort of created a lot of resentment among countries that were less privileged in that respect. And that built up and built up until you got somebody like Putin in charge of Russia. And he thought, it's one rule for them, and it's a different rule for us, And so then he thought this rules based order doesn't really apply because America's discredited it with its excessive support for Israel, and by bombing, say, like Serbia got bombed in sometime in the 90s, and that went down very badly with the with the not just the Russians but also the Chinese, because their embassy got obliterated. So people started to think America was being a bit of a hypocrite rather than being a kind of honest broker, supporting this system that was supposed to benefit everybody. And a big part of that was what the neocons did. They did, corrupt that essential function of America engaging with the wider world.
Yes. So it wasn't perfect. Yeah, it was very messy. I get it. It just seems to me like it's better than the alternative, which would be like Russia or having greater influence, or China having greater influence, or these basket case countries in the Middle East, Israel included, running amok. I guess you could argue Israel is running amok currently.
Yeah, but the other thing is that Israel created this template where you do what the fuck you like, and you don't like some countries' nuclear scientists, so you go and have them assassinated, or you just you kind of drone people to death, you temporarily invade somewhere and blow the fuck out of it. All these things Israel's been doing for years, and now you see in America they're kind of sort of doing the same things. I mean, they're blowing up these little drug boats, and they're seizing oil tankers, and they're calling people terrorists to justify it. Like, oh, you're you're not a drug smuggler anymore. You're a narco terrorist, and so on. So you stick the T label on anything, then you can blow the fuck out of it. And that's America starting to act more and more like Israel with very scant. Now, Israel, you can at least say that Israel has been radicalized by being the victim or the object of countless acts of terrorism itself. It has been repeatedly subjected to all sorts of terrorist activity. And you get into long debate about asymmetrical warfare. They deserve it. They shouldn't be there anyway. Blah blah blah. But that country was established there, and since that happened, Israeli people have been subjected to a lot of asymmetrical warfare attacks, or terrorism, if you prefer. And this has kind of created this kind of mindset where they just like see everybody as an enemy and decide to kill them before they can do the same to them. This so this very proactive approach to killing people, let's say. And America is now, even though America is not hasn't gone through this kind of severe radicalizing experience, it's not been a particularly unfortunate victim of terrorism. They are now behaving in this same way. And what's happening, I guess, is Trump has he personally feels extremely victimized, and so he's projecting that out onto the rest of the world through his power as president.
Don't you have? Don't you believe it on the face of it, though? Don't you think that what is going on, like in the Gulf of America, is these narco boats just getting blown up, and it is part of the southern border thing? Do you think there's some other reason apart from it, or do you just object to it on the principle that it's like against international law or something? Because I don't think I care about like drug smuggling boats getting blown up, actually.
Yeah, I mean, but if you're going to do that, I mean, there's a kind of logic to it, and where the logic goes is not particularly, and it's not a particularly nice place. I mean, it's like first they came for the drug smugglers, and I couldn't give a fuck because I don't really like these Venezuelan or Colombian drug smugglers or whatever they are. But once they do that, it's kind of like the thin end of the wedge. Then they find some other group they don't like, and they've already established the template that they can blow the fuck out of people that they don't like. That's the worrying thing. Now, really, what they should be doing, I mean, these boats, if they can blow them up, they should be, they should be ordering them to stop, arresting them, and processing them in some way. And that shouldn't be too hard to do for a big, strong military country like America. And if they try to stop the boats don't stop, then maybe there is some justification to shoot at the boats. But if they're just completely doing this, and we don't know exactly who's being killed either. There could be innocent people on those boats. There could be quite a lot of cases of mistaken identity. The American military has a very, very poor record with friendly fire, let's say. And when it comes to drone attacks, not everybody who's been killed in a drone attack was a terrorist. Very, very far from it. Lots of, quite innocent people were killed over the years. So it just looks messy. It's sloppy. It's sort of pseudo-dictatorial. It's the sort of thing like low-grade countries do. It's like what you'd expect the Russians to do. It's what you'd expect maybe China to do. It's not the sort of thing you expect a high-grade country to do. So it just looks low class, to be honest.
I agree with you 100%. The look of it isn't good. It's something I heard somebody say, like they might even end up impeaching Trump over. It's not necessarily legal. And so it does beg the question as to why is the Trump administration readily entering into these kinds of things which like you said, could otherwise be done in a different way. The American military is vast. It could just patrol that area quite easily. It could do this in a way which everybody would be 100% on board with. If you're just like arresting drug smugglers carrying kilos of fentanyl, nobody would have a problem with that. But just like blowing them up and publicizing this on the television, just like opens yourself up to massive amounts of criticism and pushback, particularly from your opponents. So it is strange.
Well, it's chum for the base. I mean, basically, it's performative. They know it looks good to the type of people that like Trump. So it's the same thing with some of these ICE raids. They go around and they put on a big show, arresting illegal immigrants. Which is fine. I'm completely against illegal immigration, but it's all to put on a show. But there's still about 20 million illegal immigrants in America, and they're all and the government basically knows where they are. They know who they're working for, but they allow this to go on. Which it's very dishonest. So if they're really against illegal immigration, they should be cracking down on all 20 million. But they're not. They're going around, they're picking on a few people here and there, make it into a bit of a TV show, a bit of a reality TV show. And look how tough we are, look how hardline we are on immigration, blah, blah, blah. It's a show. This is blowing up the boats is a similar kind of show. It's not going to stop the drugs. It's not going to stop Americans taking drugs. There's lots of ways to get drugs into America. It's a very corrupt country, America, by the way, as we see with some of the pardons that Trump has been handing out. If you pay £6 million, you can get any kind of pardon in America, it seems now. And so these criminals, these people on long sentences for drug smuggling, they just get one of their boys to go around with a bag full of money, and then bingo, Trump's pardoned another drug dealer. So it's all fake. It's all performative. It's all to make money for Trump. It's all to fool his incredibly stupid, low IQ supporters into thinking he's a great big tough daddy figure. So it's just completely loathsome. I mean, it's America is acting like a third world country. Also, it's probably not going to work because, like you mentioned earlier, it's at variance with American legal precepts. It doesn't conform to America's legalistic and moralistic architecture. And so another possibility is that Trump is actually using this to try to undermine that architecture. But I don't think he's strong enough again. I think all he's doing is he's preparing a kind of backlash against all the things he's associated with now. And he's associated with tariffs, he's associated with border control, he's associated with being anti-immigrant, he's associated with being anti-woke. And what he's basically doing is he's sort of toxifying all those brands, which, essentially a lot of these things are, if they were presented by somebody else, they would be good things and they would be necessary things. And there would be things that a lot of, decent people would support, including you and me. But he's just making them look bad. So there'll be an irrational, emotional backlash against Trump eventually. It's already happening. And then all the things that he was associated with will be out of fashion for a considerable period of time.
Do you not think that there may be some level? I know you're very skeptical of Trump, and you have strong criticism. Do you not think at all there could be any level of 4D chess to much of Trump's bombastic ways in which he's going about doing these things? Don't you think? Don't you give any level of possibility to the fact that he's being disruptive on purpose in order to, playing out of the deal in many of these ways, going about, being a wrecking ball to things with with a purpose towards fixing them up later, that there's any greater plan to any of this? Or do you just think it is all just like incompetence, corruption, and stupidity.
Well, I just think he's hitting the ceiling with his arse. Really, he's just falling upwards.
Right. Okay.
Um, I mean, he was quite compared to now. In his first term, he was quite a timid figure. A lot of
Yes.
that was to do with the fact that he didn't control the GOP at that time. So he had to work with other people, and he couldn't really go against the grain too much. And then he had this kind of like 4 years out of power, after a very, let's
Mm.
say, quite a strange election.
He wants to
So
get things done now.
yeah, but he was very radicalized during that 4 year period. And then
Yes.
I think he developed this kind of guerrilla mindset. Like, he just like thought, fuck it, I'll just go for it. I'll just do what the fuck I like. And I think that's what you're seeing now. It's just is unhinged, let's say. And that gives you a certain, dynamism and power. But I wouldn't say it's kind of 4D chess and there's some genius mind behind it.
Don't
There's
you
a kind
need that to achieve things, though? Like, otherwise, nothing
of
gets done, does it?
well, that's true. You do need to, for things to improve, for radical solutions to be implemented. You do need to drive the herd,
Yeah.
with strong emotions, and you can't
And
really sit
sometimes you need to
down.
act crazy, don't you? You need to act crazy, and like any time you could be capable of anything.
I'd see Hitler like that. I think there's a good argument to be made that Hitler was a much cooler and calmer figure than people realize, and that he was basically a geopolitical nerd. And I think he wasn't that interested in the Jewish question as people assume. I think he was much more interested in the geopolitical problems that Germany had as a country that was landlocked. It didn't have access to the oceans of the world. The British stood in the way of that, and it needed to develop its own empire in continental Europe, and with obviously some emphasis to the east. And in order to you know, get the German people to establish the empire that he thought they needed, he had to get them all worked up, all emotionalized. And the most convenient and easy way to do this was to create a kind of revolution based upon hatred of Jews. So the same thing in Russia. The people that took over Russia, they created the emotional energy of the Soviet Union by creating a kind of class war that was based upon hating certain groups, hating the aristocrats. And when you ran out of aristocrats, then you were against the bourgeoisie and the kulaks. So you could always find another group. So these radicalizing states, China's the same, of course. These radicalizing states to get that emotional energy to make these big geopolitical or societal changes, they have to get the masses worked up with emotion. But I don't. I think the main emotion that Trump seems to be eliciting from people is disgust. So I'm not sure you can build an empire on disgust.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It just seems to me that when the president comes in, they have like the 2 years to get things done, because they're almost certainly going to lose the midterms. It tends to always happen. Trump's on track to do that right now, and getting anything done really is going to be a messy process. And I want to talk about the tariffs in a moment. Did you have anything? I think that was in April when it certainly when it hit the markets. Were there other things you wanted to talk about before, between February and April that stood out in the year? You're muted, by the way.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think in February we had the German elections. And there was a lot of concern about whether the AFD, supported by all this Putinist propaganda on the internet, would break through, but they were contained, I think. And you got this quite
What do you think
kind
of
of,
the AFD?
well, I think they are pretty much like. I mean, I think it's not unfair to call parties like the AFD, Reform UK, and the National Rally in France Putinist parties. They are there to kind of um, basically push agendas which suit Russia. Basically, they want to divide Europe, make all these countries separate instead of united, and make them
This,
sort
by
of.
the way, is where we lose half the audience. So, I want you
Mm,
to give you, bear that in mind. People disagree. They don't
I
believe
know.
this for some
Yeah,
reason on that isn't
yeah,
right.
yeah.
It's
Well,
a
I mean,
hard sell.
a lot of it's in the detail. There is a lot of detail about how these parties have been funded in various nefarious ways, with
Yeah.
money coming out of Russia. I'm not going to go into all that now because we'd go on forever. But there is
Yeah.
a lot of evidence of Russian funding and Russian social media support, Russian memes that support these parties, Russian slop that supports these parties. And so our whole system in the West has been hacked by uh, a country with an actual deep state, which is Russia. I mean, Russia is the deep state. And look at the people running Russia. I mean, Putin, he is KGB. Most of the people around him are KGB or KGB adjacent. And that is the deep state. Russia is the deep state. And they have been playing a great game at disrupting Western democracy, which is a kind of like a wide open house. Anybody can walk in, they can plant any kind of garbage that they want in there, and then everybody who's in that house starts falling out over it. And that's what's been going on in our so-called democratic societies. They've become de-democratized by Kremlin ops to a large degree, and so it's a constant struggle to kind of fend off this malign influence. And every time there's an election, you have this pressure, and it's not just from right wing parties, also left wing parties. In Germany, the Green Party was boosted by the Russians for years. Obviously, they wanted the Germans to shut down their nuclear power stations so they would become much, much more dependent upon Russian oil and gas, which is what happened. So the Russians have been manipulating our politics for a long time. And because we don't really have the same kind of deep state apparatus that they have, we're very subject to that. So this is what's going on, and so these parties essentially, they're not just about Putinism. I mean, they can't go. I mean, Nigel Farage can't go in front of the British people and say, I love Vladimir Putin. I mean, this is what he used to say maybe before the war started, but he can't go to the British people in 2026 and say Vladimir Putin's a great guy. We should give him everything he wants. We should let him rebuild the Soviet Union. That's not a vote winner. A vote winner is being hard on migrants, staying out of the EU, leaving the European Court of Human Rights, things like that, and also taking a more isolationist stance against Russian aggression. So obviously that's buried underneath the more populist policies. But underneath the more populist policies, you can be sure that there is a few policies in there that reduce support for the Ukraine, which remove any military support that Britain has for the Ukraine on the basis that we can't afford it, and we need to, increase pensions or the National Health Service. So it's not a very difficult trick to pull off. Most voters are idiots. They want very obvious things. They want tax cuts. They want more government spending. They want more spending on healthcare. They don't like foreign wars. They don't like to see a lot of money spent on protecting other countries. So it's a very easy thing to sell. And these parties are pushed in that direction by sometimes by direct operatives. sometimes by direct infiltration, but also by a lot of useful idiots. Yeah, the example of Reform UK's Welsh leader who was convicted for Russian bribery. That's a very neat piece of evidence. There's a lot of less neat pieces of evidence. The history of GB News is worth looking at. That's been funded to the tune of about 30 million in losses every year by a couple of dubious people in Dubai who had very intimate business links with Vladimir Putin in the past. So this is what's going on. This is the big picture. And
Yeah, in terms of this Welsh guy, by the way, he admitted 8 counts of bribery. His videos it's a shocking case. Maybe not shocking to people like you who know, but to anybody who isn't aware of this, like this guy, you can just go and look up his speeches in the EU Parliament. He was an MEP, and he was literally getting scripts from a Kremlin agent and then reading them out in the EU Parliament, saying, that the Ukraine, basically anti-Ukrainian statements, literal scripts.
yeah, and people don't realize how difficult it is to prove a lot of these things in a British court of law. You have to have the full burden of proof. You have to have all the evidence, and usually the evidence is not easy to get hold of. These operations are designed to be difficult to expose. There's all sorts of secretive ways that they have of peddling influence. So that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Why do you think people on our side of politics, nominally on our side of anti-immigration, nominally right-wing politics, today do not believe that Russia is A, a threat, or B, interested in our politics, and C, meddling at all? They just don't agree. They think that, like you and I even talking about this, like we're the ones who are wrong.
Well, one is forced to conclude that they're just a bit dim, but
Okay.
and also, I think they're given a false choice. They're saying you've got to just like think that Putin's the greatest thing since sliced bread, or you believe in all this globo homo shit. That's a false choice. So you give them a false choice. You ignore all the multiple choices in between those two false choices, and they're forced to choose A or B. Do I like Vladimir Putin, who's against gay marriage and he said some base things about the Jews, or am I a kind of Kamala Harris fanboy? So it's
Yes,
framing is very important.
and you have all these people on our side of politics pumping out constantly because Russia is in the news now. Then we have these who I just call Duginists on the dissident right, who literally are coming out and just like regurgitating the memes. I'm not going to fight. They want your sons to die for Russia, to fight for gay rights in the UK, and I'm not going to do it, and all this kind of nonsense.
Yeah, well, Dugin wanted his daughter to die for Russia anyway, so
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that covers a few things, I guess. The German elections, very kind of very much a kind of Duginist operation underway there. And then I guess was it in March or April? I think it was in March. That's when Zelensky was in the White House, and that was the famous meeting where they tried to ambush him, and we saw this side of J.D. Vance that hadn't been so apparent until that moment, where it was it was like it's like a gang of bullies trying to ambush Zelensky at a very kind of awkward moment right in front of the cameras, and then Trump was berating him with having no cards, and it just kind of, in a way, it kind of backfired because it just got so much sympathy for the Ukraine.
I remember JD Vance saying, "Why didn't what was he saying? Why didn't you say thank you?
That
Why
was it.
can't you
That
say
was it. Yeah,
thank you?"
it's so petty. And then the other guy says, show some respect. Why aren't you wearing a tie and all this? It was just, God, it was the most kind of embarrassing and loathsome, and it was probably the lowest moment that America has ever sunk to in its relatively long history.
In a way, Zelensky does not help himself. I understand that visually to people who aren't paying deep attention, he is an unlikable figure to them. I get why they think this. I disagree, actually. I did initially think this way, but I look at it from, I zoom out and I think, he's actually being a courageous leader. He was very popular in Ukraine. He was like a celebrity. He was very good at that. He's a competent, talented person. He did that. Ukraine's Dancing on Ice, or what, gained natural popularity within the country, won the election, and then when Russia invaded, he refused to leave the country, stayed there. They were literally reinforcing his headquarters with sandbags while it was being bombed. This is a person who is genuinely courageous, but I agree that he's made certain errors in why doesn't he just explain the reason that I'm not wearing a suit is because traditionally this is what wartime leaders do. You wear your wartime uniform. Look at what Winston Churchill used to walk around in. And, it's to remind everybody that my country's at war, and this is like this is like a tradition that everybody does, and and just explain these things, and
Yeah, I think he was a bit, they're coming at him from all directions, so he's probably a bit overwhelmed at that particular moment. But it was one of the nastiest moments, and it did backfire because and not just that, but other things that Trump was doing. The next month, we had the Canadian elections. Everybody was pretty sure, going by the opinion polls, that the Conservatives were going to win. And then because of this reaction against Trump's rhetoric and the way he was going on, they actually put a Liberal back in there, in Mark Carney. So, there was a bit of backlash from that.
yes, yeah. Zelensky's also not a great English speaker, so when he's under pressure, he struggles. He was struggling in that moment very much, and you're right, they were all jumping on it. Trump had the whole he has that half the cabinet, the Scott Bessent and JD Vance. He has I like to think it was like the famous five or whatever. He always has in there when he brings one of these leaders into the room, and that is quite a pressing moment for any of these people. With all the cameras there, and why don't you say so? Why don't you say thank you? And all this nonsense. And then they threw him out of the White House, didn't they? And sent him back.
Yeah,
Almost like, you will agree to what we've decided. And he didn't.
Yeah, and so you got to really think about, what's Trump's motivation. And I mean, somebody like Vlad Vexler, he goes into the possible psychological drivers of Trump's behavior. He's got a kind of fanboy crush on Putin. He likes all these tough guy leaders. He kind of aspires to be like that. But I just think it's all related to stuff that happened in Moscow a long, long time ago.
Oh, you think it's literal compromat?
Yeah, why not? Because this is not a new song that Trump's singing. This is something that he's been consistent on. And it goes back to 1987 when he went to Moscow, and he came back from Moscow. And the first thing he did almost was to put a big ad in several national newspapers in America, several of the big newspapers, sort of criticizing America's defense policy. protecting countries like Japan and so on, for example. Why should America be spending money to protect these countries? And that is a legitimate question to ask. If you have a military alliance and America is spending a larger percentage of its GDP on defense and it's protecting these countries that are spending far less, that's a legitimate question to address. But it's just like the way that Trump goes to Moscow, he comes back, he puts all these bloody ads in these newspapers, and it's basically the Kremlin script. So they probably got, either they bribed him with money because he was abysmal at business and he always needed money. Either they bribed him or they got compromat. Probably a bit of both, I imagine. And that was 1987. 1989, Russia started to collapse. 1990, the Soviet Union's, down the tubes of history. And Trump got away with it until maybe a couple of decades later. Somebody in the KGB archives dusted off a folder with his name on it and thought, this is very, very interesting. Who is this Donald Trump figure? Let's look into him. Maybe we can, reactivate this one. And I think there's a little bit of that going on. I think that's not a conspiracy theory. That's kind of like a plausible hypothesis for what happened based upon things that we know did happen.
I guess the alternative would be you could explain it by his personal narcissism, just to want to be known as the fixer, the peacemaker, in quotes, peace. I don't think the peace that he wants to impose on Ukraine would be a just peace, but he just wants to bring these wars to an end at any cost to Ukraine. So basic, and in doing so, he felt like he could bully Zelensky and bully the Ukrainians into giving enough concessions to Russia so that they would agree to just like get this ended, and then he could take the credit for it. And that is his current motivator. What do you think to that?
Well, there's probably a bit of that. I mean, he's a center of attention because it's on the news. And he is a kind of avid news channel watcher. That's by all accounts. He always sees what people are saying about him on the news. So there is a very real narcissistic element to almost everything he does. But it's just so kind of lopsided the way he behaves. There's an obvious bias that really shouldn't be there. If he's just this big egomaniac, narcissistic guy who wants all the attention, he should be doing other things. He should be sending more weapons to the Ukraine. He should be like ripping off Putin and criticizing him much more. That would get a lot of attention. That would be in the news. That would focus the spotlight on Trump. So there's other ways to get the spotlight and to maybe get even more of the spotlight. But instead, he does it in this this rather peculiar way, which involves trying to bring the Ukraine to its knees. So there's got to be something there. There's probably, there's a lot of stuff in the Epstein files, which are constantly coming out. But there's all sorts of stuff that isn't in the Epstein files. I'm pretty sure that there must be, Epstein files beyond the Epstein files, which are held by people in Israel as well, because again, Trump, he doesn't really like Israel, but he ends up, supporting Israel and doing things that Israel wants ultimately. So that looks like coercion, and it looks like they have something on him.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, with that, there is the Jared Kushner effect, of course, who is best pals with Netanyahu, isn't he? So, Netanyahu stayed at his house when he comes to stays at Kushner's house when he comes to visit the US and stuff. So,
Anyway, let's move on to May. We'll skip the Pope dying. That's not very important, is it? The big event of May, of course, was Morgoth being doxxed.
Yes. I didn't want to talk about that, but just because I don't want to point out the source. I mean, I always feel very nervous. I'll just be honest, feel very nervous about pointing people to what is a Hope Not Hate article. So don't approve of those people. But what do you want to
Yeah.
say about it?
Well, I thought it was interesting the way he kind of doxed himself as well, though, because
Did he?
yeah, around the same time he published his DNA info, and I think he's about only one third
Don't tell me he's
English.
Irish.
Yeah, he's actually he's
Ah,
Irish.
I
He's
knew
about a
it.
third Irish. He's about
Uh,
10 or 20% Welsh, and he's about 30% English, and he's 10% Northern Irish. I don't know how that got in there. So he's a bit of a mongrel, a bit of a mutt.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it
What
is
is Colin's
actually.
beef with Morgoth? Says Alphabet Cat. I don't think you have a beef, do you? Like you're
I
not.
don't have a beef. I just think he sucks really as a commentator and as a kind of shill for Putinism. So yeah, I don't actually listen to him much or at all. And I haven't for years, really. But yeah, he's one of the oddball characters on the dissident right, and
The poet of the dissident right.
I do notice quite a few British nationalists do have a strong strain of the Irish in them. So there's a little bit of resentment against Britain mixed in with their so-called British nationalism.
Yeah, what do you think of these characters who, do you think they realize and are doing it deliberately where everything that they pen or speak about is the bad aspects of the country? I know this is like what brought them into politics in the first place, that they have criticisms with the way that the country is running, but there's something about these characters like Morgoth who every time they open their mouth it is deep demoralization in of the most cutting kind. My friend Wyvern ruthlessly is making videos about this. He goes way further than I like to do about any of this, but the demoralization porn pushing of these characters. Do you think they're self-aware? Do you think they're doing it to shine their own shoes, line their own grift, or do you think it is like a malaise? What's your take on it, Colin?
I think probably each case is unique, but there is I think there must become a point where you realize you're saying things because other people like you or want you to say them. And then you start to think, what's going on here? Am I a genuine voice, or am I just this kind of hollow creature that has been subjected to some anonymous audience capture operation? So yeah, I don't know. I mean, if that's what you're doing, the trouble with these people is that it becomes their job, and if it becomes your job, you can't be fired. You've got to do whatever it takes not to be fired. And being fired in this case is saying the wrong thing about Putin, and you kind of know that. And maybe you might have doubts about Putin, but you think, nah, I better just keep them to myself. And it becomes it's if you kind of trick yourself, it's like being a Christian. If you trick yourself into believing it, then it's easier to pretend to be a Christian. Or if you trick yourself into believing Putin's a good guy, it's easier to spout those kind of talking points that you kind of know you need to spout in order to get your what is effectively your salary. So there's sort of certain there's several twisted loops of psychology going on in the heads of people like that.
Yeah, you're right that it's an unpopular take to be on the side of Ukraine, Ukraine is considered cringe. On the dissident right, they think that you're part of some kind of gay op, or you're just like a liberal, or I think somebody called us like 77 brigade for even like having this position, that that you're against the aggressive invasion of Ukraine in Europe, that this is a disgusting war, people are dying every day, it doesn't have to happen, Russia could go home, they could stop it tomorrow if they wanted to, one country is fighting for its survival against the other, whatever you might think of the cause of it. One is prosecuting a war against the other. It's a disgusting war. But if you have these opinions, then you do, and you are a monetized creator, and it is your job on the dissident right to under no illusion that it is the job of many of these people. Then you lose 2/3 of your audience instantly on the dissident right if you make this case. So you legitimately can't do it.
Yeah, 90% of your donations and funding, probably.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're highly incentivized to be complete morons because, Ukraine is the whitest country in Europe. And the Russian army that's attacking them is full of Indians, people from Africa, Buryats from Mongolia, North
Chechens.
Koreans. It's like the United Nations, really. The Russian army at this particular moment. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians, all these kind of Nazi legions, the Azov battalion. So you think that some of these people would actually feel a bit conflicted, at least, but no, they don't.
It should be the easy. I like say to people, it should be the easiest position to lend moral support to Ukraine being invaded by this foreign army who's conscripting North Koreans, using Iranian Shahed drones to attack civilians. Like just on Christmas Day, there's hundreds of Iranian Shahed drones unleashed into Kiev, however you say it, which is hundreds of miles from the front line. Civilian buildings, just kids getting their heads blown off in their sleep, hundreds of miles from the front line. It should be the easiest case on earth for nationalists to support this nationalist state being invaded by this foreign army, but people just can't see it. I don't get it. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a bit funny, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
but
I
think one of the other things that we were seeing is that just like Trump is kind of undercutting conservatism in the West, Putin is also undercutting Russian influence with his war. The longer the war goes on, the weaker Russia gets. And, they're sort of like, before the war started, Russia had a fairly decent geopolitical position. It had a lot of countries that were allied to it, that were sympathetic to Putin's aims and ambitions. And since the war started, he's been losing allies. And of course, an obvious one was what happened in Syria. There was a revolution, a war. His puppet there, Assad, got kicked out. And just now there are big protests in Iran. So, Iran is very, very unstable. And it's also unstable because it got involved in the war with Israel. I think that was in around about May as well, or May or June. So you've got these wars going on, and you've got the weakening of these regimes that were formerly aligned with Russia. I mean, if Putin wasn't so involved in the Ukraine, Israel would not have bombed the fuck out of Iran. They wouldn't have, blown their air force out of the sky and started dropping bombs into Iran. So what Putin's done to Russia, he's made it weaker, and he's also opened the door to other countries and to revolutions against many of his allies. And of course,
Mm.
the other Putin ally that's in trouble now is probably Maduro, and ironically, he's under pressure from America. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
you've got Trump kind of playing both sides there. So that makes it a bit more confusing. So is he really on Russia's side? Because if he was on Russia's side, why would he be trying to topple one of Putin's allies? But the it's getting harder and harder to work out what's really going on.
Yeah. So where do you see the Russia thing going currently? What's your feeling? I saw Zelensky and Trump were meeting again the other day. They said they're 90% there to a deal, but then Russia has claimed that, which Ukraine denies, that they attempted to attack his residence in Moscow somewhere, almost as a pretext to get out of any deal again and to continue the fighting. Don't you think they're looking for a peace now? I mean, do they just want to keep the
Yeah.
fighting going on?
I'm not really sure what Putin's doing. He has to at least put on an act that he's a tough guy. He's not going to compromise. But yeah, from what I hear, Russia's economically is hurting. They can't really keep this level of. I mean, the Ukrainians are really hurting them by attacking their oil industry.
Mm.
They're losing a lot of money. They're at the point now where they're going to have to be forced to conscript people instead of emptying their prisons and paying people from the third world to do their meat wave assaults. Um, and the Ukrainians, they're bolstered because it's their country. They're trying to defend their country. They've got no alternative, really. They can't go home. I mean, the only army that can go home here is the Russian army. And I think that even if Putin pulled off a win, it wouldn't work. As soon as the war ended, the dislocation to the Russian economy would become very, very apparent, and it would cause a massive kind of dislocation of Russian politics and economics that could probably lead to the second fall of the Soviet Union, but on a smaller scale. And in that sort of situation, there's no telling what would happen to Putin. Probably end up on the end of a meat hook somewhere, and that's if he wins.
Yes. What do you think of Gunther Fehlinger, who who is a big NATO supporter, big EU supporter? He's very. Well, what do you think of him?
I don't know. That accent, no, it's a bit too much, really. I mean, it's funny at first, and you kind of, oh, this is kind of interesting, this over the top Austrian. But after you listen to 10 or 15 minutes, it starts to grate a little bit. So I'm not really a fan of Gunter. I
Okay.
mean, why isn't he talking in German? If he's got such a heavy accent, there's got to be
Well,
something funny there.
he's wanted to speak to an English-speaking audience, isn't it? I was just looking for a picture of the current state in Ukraine at the minute. Anybody who thinks that Russia is just like easily wiping the floor with Ukraine, they're still just here. This front line, it barely moves. They fight over a village or something, and then the village gets taken back. Just consider where Kiev is over here, and that they, send their Shahed drones and bomb this place, on like a daily basis. And what has that to do with the actual frontline fighting? It's like a literal war of terror on the people of Ukraine, So,
Anyway, moving on. July, we had Trump, and then quite soon afterwards, Vance coming over to Scotland. Do you remember that in the summer?
no, barely. Barely a
Yeah,
memory. Was
yeah,
that for his golf course or something?
yeah. He owns a big golf course in Ayrshire, and he came over for it seemed like about a week. And Keir Starmer had to go up there, and then the Angela von der Leyen had to go up there, and so he was kind of like holding court on the Ayrshire coast. That was kind of funny. And then after he went back to America, um, JD Vance showed up in Air Force Two, also landed at Prestwick Airport, and he went to stay at some sort of Scottish resort home uh, near Kilmarnock, which is pretty close to where Trump was staying. So I thought that was kind of weird because that's my neck of the woods, and so you had Trump and Vance coming over here for their summer holidays.
Yeah, so what do you think that's about? Do you think it's just his golf course, or
Well, I
something
think
more?
I guess you could say it's this thing that Americans have where they being American is not quite enough. They all lack something, some element of identity, and so they all have this kind of sentimental attachment to some other country from whence their ancestors came. And in Vance's case, he sees himself as i.e., Scotch Irish, and in Trump's case, his mother, came directly from the Outer Hebrides. So a lot of it's to do with that. It's a sense of identity, which it's not just Trump and Vance. I think most Americans have that to some degree. And so you've got to view Americans in that light. They're a little bit kind of rootless, let's say.
They stayed at Checkers and they were hosted by David Lammy, as I understand. There was a little bit of controversy. I don't know if you saw this over in Japan, Colin, but when David Lammy hosted JD Vance, he took him fishing, and it turns out David Lammy does not have a fishing license, and so he illegally took JD Vance fishing. So this was a controversy over here.
Well, that's the contrast, isn't it? Like in Britain, we get into a big flurry about JD, about David Lammy not having a fishing license. Meanwhile, in America, the people that they're hosting are sort of essentially murdering people every day.
Yes. Here it is. Lammy admits fishing without license.
Yeah, it just makes Britain look a bit lame, really, when you have headlines like that. And it's sort of always boosted up on social media, and everybody starts arguing about it, and it's really unimportant, quite trivial. I mean, you should have a fishing license. Don't get me wrong. I'm not endorsing people fishing without fishing licenses, but the fact that this becomes the focus of the political debate, and that becomes the story instead of anything more important, that's completely absurd.
Yes. By the way, we skipped over tariffs, which happened, I guess, across from April into the summer. Did you want to say anything about the tariffs that Trump implemented? What did you think about all this? Because it was something I was keenly tuned into at the time.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting because JD Vance, he's of Scotch Irish descent, according to his own identity, his own identitarian beliefs, shall we say. And the Scotch Irish, a lot of them ended up in America because of tariffs. You see what happened when the Scotch Irish are basically just Scottish people. Okay, I mean it's a very confusing term. They're Scottish people who went over to Ireland and settled mainly Ulster because the land there had been confiscated to a large degree, because of some rebellion by the O'Neills and people like that. And a lot of this land was then given over to settlement, and a lot of this, very few people from England wanted to go there because it was basically the Wild West. But Scottish people, being a kind of tougher breed, were happy to go the short distance across the sea to Northern Ireland, and they made quite a successful little country there for a time. But because they were Presbyterians, they were kind of discriminated against by the English government, which controlled Ireland, and they placed tariffs on exports to England from Northern Ireland, and essentially that destroyed their economy. So a lot of them were forced to then relocate across the Atlantic to North America, and this is also why we lost America to a large degree, because we transplanted a very resentful population of Scots Irish in large numbers to these kind of frontier American states in the essentially in the early part of the 18th century, so that by the time that the American Civil War, no, not Civil War, so the American War of Independence came around, these people were they were ready to fight against Britain and to oppose Britain to the death. And that's one of the reasons why we ended up losing North America, thanks to tariffs. So tariffs are not always this productive and creative force that some people in MAGA think they are. But I think tariffs are justified some of the time, and I think they're especially justified when it comes to important strategic industries. So I think we've got to protect important technology, and we've got to protect our ability to make weapons in case there's a war, for example. So I am in favor of tariffs if they're implemented wisely, but the way that Trump implements tariffs, it's very willy-nilly. It's very kind of there's no obvious logic to what he's doing. He says it's about bringing jobs back to America, but a lot of these tariffs really don't work that way, because a lot of things that are produced, they have hundreds of different parts. They're produced, these different components are produced in several different countries. They have to cross borders countless times in order to make something. And so
Do you remember this?
yeah, I know. It's just it was like a comedy show.
It was. This is
It's
the
like
day the market crashed, by the way. April the
yeah,
8th, I
he
remember it
knew
well.
he knew it was going to crash. He
You think he made a
shorted the
fortune
market.
on it?
Yeah, he shorted the market. So him and a lot of his friends shorted the market. And I think this is another problem with Trump. It's just one blatant corruption scam after another. It's just endless corruption, endless grafting. It's just disgusting, really, what he gets away with. And in a way, people. The most surprising thing is the lack of outrage. This is the sort of thing, the sort of behavior that if you compare what Trump gets away with to what Richard Nixon couldn't get away with. I mean, what happened? There was some small burglary by people who were sort of connected to his team, looking for a bit of information on the Democrat Party, and this became the big defining issue of the 1970s, and the whole political system was kind of founded on this kind of Watergate myth about being squeaky clean. And then Trump comes along and he starts basically shitting over everything, and people don't notice the smell. It's ridiculous.
Yes. Did you manage to profit from the tariffs at all in April? Famously, I did. So
Well, I can't really say
you
because
can't divulge. Can't divulge.
well,
Yes. Sorry.
it's a difficult calculation to make, to be honest. So
Okay. Yeah, well, just to let everybody know, famously, when the blood began running in the stock market, I bought in during this period. I saw this, Colin, as Trump playing Art of the Deal. I have read some of that book. And this seemed obvious to me that what he was doing was, you know, which he explains in the book, that you over demand what you want by like 3 or 4 times, so that your competitor or your potential business partner comes to the table with a higher offer than what you would have settled for in the beginning in the first place. So it seemed obvious to me this is what he was doing. The markets reacted in panic. The S&P 500 dived something like 10 or 15%. Other stocks, more volatile stocks, like dived by 50% on the back of it. It was a great moment to buy in. I was probably just lucky though, but yeah, yeah. Do you not admire his strategy in a way? You know.
Well, I think he was mainly doing the tariffs because it enabled him to make the position of president the center of this kind of transactional politics that he wants to do. Because the thing about Trump, the word they used to define him, I think it's probably an accurate term. He is transactional. He likes transactions because transactions mean people need something from him, and therefore they need to give him something. And by imposing all these tariffs, he got into transactions with every single country on that chart. So this big board he's holding up, it's basically a big invitation to do transactions with him, and this is how he got all his
Yes.
gifts and freebies and dodgy deals and people buying his shitcoin for a bit. And this is just the this giant funnel of corruption that we see in America. And people really should be up in arms about this, but they're just too. I don't know. I think they you get this feeling that in the years before Trump too, people got outraged too much about too many little things. I mean, there was this incident where a drug addict was unfortunately kneeled on by a police officer, and it was rather tragic and boohoo and not very nice. But that was a insignificant little policing mishap. But that ended up sending the whole country into a paroxysm of rage and counter rage, with cities burning and for weeks on end. And so people were kind of overreacting. And then you had all this kind of the gender politics thing, where people got very worked up about gay marriage or not gay marriage, or transgender people in sport, or not, transgender changing rooms, all these things that people got so excited about, so worked up about. So it's like America kind of blew its load of outrage in the years before Trump too, so that when Trump came along and he started basically implementing a full spectrum corruption state, people were just so jaded and pumped out that they didn't have anything to react with. So that's the kind of weird and insane thing about this situation at the moment.
Yeah, when the tariffs thing happened, the markets were spooked, terrified, and I think people were just they were wait they what he did this he did this interesting thing where he made this like big announcement here and impose all these tariffs, but then he was willing to he quickly indicated that he might be willing to walk it back, and he then said, I'll put on, I'll review it in 30 days or something like that. And so this made people happy again. And they were like, oh, thank God it's not as bad as what we thought. And so they were like, how he managed it in stages. Actually, I look back and I think was quite clever, quite masterful, how he managed to avoid a lot of what you say could have turned to like literal protests, could have turned to real outrage. And I think it was because he did it in these stages and people were just like satisfied and happy that there were signs that he would roll it back, and it wouldn't be as bad as they were expecting if they just waited 30 days or 90 days.
Yeah, well, a lot of the so-called tariffs were they didn't come into effect immediately.
Yes.
They were future tariffs, so they didn't directly affect people's jobs the next day. If those tariffs were immediately imposed and they immediately affected people's jobs, there would have been riots. There would have been a mass outpouring on the streets. But they're all theoretical tariffs, and they were just put out there to spook the market, which you obviously benefited from, and to make this transactional invitation to everybody in the world to come over and start dropping bars of gold in his pocket, which is what I think the Swiss literally did. And in the case of Britain, Keir Starmer couldn't really do the same. So instead, he had to get the next best thing, which was a nice, friendly letter from the king, which is something else, that appeals to Trump.
Yes, I forgot about that. He also sent everybody's favorite Peter Mandelson to negotiate 10% for us, which they
That's another good thing, isn't it? Because like Mandelson is the perfect guy to be ambassador to America. He's a complete sleazebag. He knows a lot of people in the Epstein files. He can get on Trump's wavelength, so to speak. This guy should still be there as ambassador because he knows what's going on. But because in Britain we always kind of overreact against every little minor thing, like the Lamy fishing license, the fact that this guy had a tenuous connection. Well, they're actually best friends, according to what he says. But because he had a kind of social interaction with Epstein, we had to obviously, we couldn't accept that. He had to immediately go. He had to fall on his sword, and we had to get some boring career diplomat to replace him, who probably doesn't, get any access to anybody important in Washington now. So that's really underplayed our hand. That's weakened our, game in Washington, I think.
Yeah, and the elephant in the room with Peter Mandelson is he's gay. So he probably, had nothing to do with Epstein and his girls. So, I mean, he...
Yeah, he's in the clear.
Yes, literally. So...
and I don't think Mossad want to kind of...
Wrong place, wrong time, basically.
Yeah, and Mossad don't want to drop him in it either, so...
Yeah. Okay, that's the tariffs. Then what else is on your advent calendar of events of 2025, Colin?
Well, there was we're still in July, I think, because in July we had the big beautiful bill.
Oh yes,
and basically that was just Trump increasing debt. I mean, there was massive tax cuts, and there were some cuts to benefits, and there was another $1 trillion splurged on the extremely wasteful American military industrial sector. And basically that just meant America was more in debt than ever. And so, so Trump is he's not a fiscal conservative by any means. He basically wants to just print as much money as possible, borrow as much money as possible, and spend as much money as possible. And that's just his modus operandi. And he seems to get away with it. The American economy should basically be experiencing, Weimar levels of hyperinflation by now. But, there's a few things that sort of work against that.
Yes. I mean, the pushback on this would be that if you can encourage growth, then you can grow your way, maybe not out of, but through your debt increasing. And this is the Elon Musk approach. This is what his conclusion was about, Doge. Doge was a waste of time, that you can go in and try to cut all these things from the budget. You come up with all these problems. People have all these invested interests as to where all this money is going. You find out you really can't cut anything out of the budget. To any large extent, and the only way out of America's debt problem is to grow the economy, and through growth you can come out the other side. And the other way would be what Trump really wants, is to lower the interest rates, which Fed Chair Powell has been not playing ball with all year.
Yeah, I think next year he's going to replace Powell.
Get ready.
And he'll replace him with somebody who's going to really cut interest rates. So the dollar's going to plummet in value. That's what's going to happen, compared to the euro and the pound, and not the yen though, because the yen's on a kind of downward trajectory as well. But they're trying to increase interest rates there. So yeah, I think we'll see dollar devaluation next year. And that will probably boost American exports. So, yeah, I wonder how serious Trump really is about this policy of trying to reshore industry. Because I think one of the things that they are doing, they're trying to get more and more chips produced in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you've been keeping an eye on that.
I have. I do personally think that the tech bros have warned Trump that this is a AI race, that he who builds it first will dominate the next decades or century. You can't let China win. I think I hope that all this part of the strategy, the tariff strategy with China, has been part of this, towards crippling their ability to compete in the AI race with the chips and everything, and that part of the re-onshoring sorry, I'm losing my voice here. The re-onshoring of the chips back to America is part of this as well. He has got NVIDIA to relocate chip fab making back into America and produce the first Blackwells in America within 8 months. Now, I understand that part of that involved bringing over a load of people from where they were making them. I think they were making them in Taiwan at the time. But you had to bring over basically all the people who were making them over there into America on H-1B visas. This hasn't gone down well with the base. But I don't see how you can do something like that within 8 months without bringing... I think the NVIDIA guy explained this, that he's, Jensen Huang, he said, you just can't fire up a factory without bringing all the people over who've actually been making them in situ straight over into America, because you have to train these people up for months, if not years. So that was part of the H-1B visas thing. But I think this is a larger plan towards winning the AI race over the next 5 to 10 years, I hope.
Yeah, but he's not going to be winning any AI race if he loses the midterms, is he? Because basically, if he loses the midterms, then he's going to be impeached, and that'll be the end of everything, really. So the problem that Trump has is he's doing a lot of things that are not really going to be very popular. Like you mentioned, a lot of people didn't like the H-1B visas that they had to issue en masse to all these workers, because Americans could never do this kind of work. And a lot of the AI, the AI boom is one of the few positive things in the American economy. That's a genuine kind of organic thing that could boost the economy, but it's also one of the things that could kill a lot of jobs again. So even though it's a positive in economic terms, it's a negative in social terms and popularity terms, because you create unemployment or you push down wages again, or so everything is sort of pushing towards this kind of point of decision in November next year, where people go to the polls, and if they really don't like Trump, if they don't like what he's doing, they're going to put the Democrats in, and the Democrats are going to like tear Trump apart really if they get a majority in the Congress. And so all his plans to reshore this or to boost AI or to defeat China in this
Mm.
great global competition, it'll all be out the window. You see, so this is the problem that America has. It's not designed to perform well in these long term global geopolitical struggles. Whereas a country like China, which doesn't have to worry about having awkward elections every now and then, and weird kind of populist figures popping up to lead the country chaotically and briefly for a few years. They don't have to worry about that. They have these kind of very kind of cool thinking, cold hearted, technocratic leaders that can centralize power, can facilitate these long term plans to undermine their rivals, that can acquire dominance in various sectors. So the problem is the American model is not geared for these kinds of struggles. And Donald Trump, even though in a kind of cack-handed way he's trying to respond to that, he's doing it in a way that will just implode it, I feel.
Yeah, it's absolutely a worry, I think, for America. If he loses the midterms, it's going to be chaos for 2 years, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah. What do you think? Well, it's too far to look ahead. If he loses the midterms, do you think JD Vance has a chance in
No, no.
2 years'
JD
time?
Van, I don't know. I mean, he seems to be kind of popular with the MAGA base, but I don't think that he's genuinely popular. I think if he has any kind of popularity, it's extremely soft popularity that will
Mm.
disappear. And he's only popular because they think Trump wants him to be the successor. So they think, oh, he's
Mm.
probably Trump's boy. Trump chose him. Trump wants him to be the next guy. Yeah, yeah, I support JD Vance. They don't really feel it though. So I don't think he'll keep. He doesn't have legs long term to maintain that kind of popularity. And to become president, you've got to win over the independents. So I don't think he has that kind of appeal. Um, so he's not going to go anywhere. I don't think Marco Rubio's got it either.
Mm.
And there's almost nobody who really has the kind of personal attributes or charisma necessary to carry on Trump's very scarred and sullied legacy, I have to say. Maybe
Mm.
the one person that possibly could have carried on Trump's legacy was unfortunately assassinated in September. Who am I talking about, SJJ?
Who was assassinated in September? Charlie
Yeah.
Kirk.
Yes, he was obviously Trump's natural successor, charismatic figure who could speak to large
Not Tucker
crowds.
Carlson.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I mean Tucker Carlson. Could you see him as a kind of politician, as a vote for me? I'm Tucker Carlson. I love going visiting Russian
Not
supermarkets.
anymore.
There
I
was a
used to like Tucker. The scales were burnt from my eyes as soon as he left Fox News. Though he just seemed to turn into this manic, strange character. I mean, his first show was all about UFOs, and then he was going to Russia, and just
yeah, and then he had Martyr.
this.
He had Martyr Maid on.
Yes.
That guy. Yeah, Churchill was the troublemaker. Yeah, yeah. Churchill started World War II. Yeah, Churchill
Yeah.
gassed the Jews. Yeah, probably that's
Yeah.
he's going to come out with that later. Yeah, that's so. Yeah, there was a sense that Tucker went off the deep end a bit there. He went a bit
Mm.
Jordan Peterson. I thought, a bit weird and wacky, and
And he's
uh,
gone all Christian nationalist. I think
yeah,
he's CIA. I think he's CIA if anybody is. Ab 100%.
It's just yeah, it just runs in the blood with him,
So
obviously.
weird, his new vein. Tucker Carlson is so weird today. And he flips into that manic laughter that if you, once you notice it, it's so fake. So
Yeah,
it's
he's got that
all an act.
horrible way of laughing, like Kamala Harris
Spontaneously.
had. Kamala Harris had that thing where she'd suddenly start
Mm,
laughing as if that would people would like her more if she did that.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think Charlie Kirk, he could have been the boy to carry the torch, but unfortunately, as we all saw, um, tragic thing about America is too many people have guns, of course, and they should follow our example, of course, and do what we do, ban guns. So you're sort of forced to kill people with your own hands, or drive vans into them, or find a less convenient
Mm.
means of assassinating people.
Do you have any non-conventional theories on the Charlie Kirk thing? I'm sure you're familiar with the Candace Owens conspiratard takes.
Yeah, I think Candice has got a real chance of being a VP contender, though. But it
Yes.
just shows you how. Yeah, I just think all these people, all these personalities, it just shows you how degraded the political discourse space has become. Since we removed the gatekeeper media, which none of us at the time liked it, but since we
Mm.
removed the gatekeeper media, we've got all these kind of kooks and weirdos and wackos who are sort of defining the debate.
Mm.
And Candace Owens is one of them. So a lot of people take her seriously, which is
Yes.
it's
She
I don't
gets
know
like
whether
a
to.
100,000 live viewers when she does her streams.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, really. What the Americans will put up in terms of kind of low quality political commentary. And this person's a fucking megastar. It
Mm.
would it wouldn't. I mean, it's impossible for somebody like that to. I mean, on the plus side about Britain, it's impossible for somebody like that to have the same kind of following in the UK. We are a lot more
Mm.
skeptical about nutcases.
Yeah, she does speak to the mind of the American black person, though. She really is like on the wavelength. Many of them do think like this. They are, skeptical of power and you know believe in deep conspiracies and stuff. So she really is like, and there's something great about it in a way.
Well,
There's something
well,
really perfect
well,
about it.
you know why though? It's because like back in the 1970s, the KGB had an operation to convince black people that AIDS was a CIA operation.
Oh, really?
And that kind of, yes, that was the sort of bedrock of this black conspiratard thinking. And it
Mm.
sort of, continued in an unbroken tradition down to Candace.
Mm.
And the other thing about the Charlie Kirk killing, I mean, everybody around the world has been most amazed by, is the way that Erica Kirk has bravely
Oh,
bounced back from this, soul crushing tragedy.
yes.
And
What
I
do you think
mean,
about that?
stadium tours, fireworks, the grieving, grifting tour, she's just packing them in. And I don't know what's wrong with Americans. They love all this. They go there and they think she's great. She's a superstar. Her husband got shot. That's wonderful. What a great woman she is. I don't know. I just to me, I mean, growing up. America always seemed sort of like semi-familiar. It was like that's they're not so different from us. We're a bit American. They're a bit British. We're kind of on the same page about a lot of things. They're a bit different from us in some minor ways, but they didn't seem like a weird foreign, in fact, alien country. It's like
Oh, sorry.
fucking
Turn the
hell.
music off.
Is that her? Is that her? Yeah, there she goes. Yeah. Basically, that is exactly what she's doing. It's like
These
they've
these memes are fantastic. On people are posting all different versions of this.
I mean,
Yeah.
they've climbed aboard the rocket ship, and they've gone to another planet. Really, the Americans this last year. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird situation. She's also almost 7 years older than Charlie, which is a
Oh
weird
yeah,
thing.
older women, a bit like the
Oh,
Macron thing, not quite as bad.
yeah, yeah. And the French are trying to assassinate Candace using the French Foreign Legion with secret aeroplanes currently. So there's that aspect to it too.
Oh, fingers crossed, eh? Well,
Yes. Um, yeah. So that. Did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about from before September when Charlie met his demise, unfortunately, which was a terrible thing, by the way. I was shocked by it at the time.
yeah, shocked but not surprised, as we say,
Mm,
because
yeah, yeah.
I'm surprised. In a way, I'm surprised that more people don't get assassinated in America because there are a
Hmm.
lot of
So
crazy
easy.
people and there are a lot of crazy guns out there.
Hmm.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
see what else was going on. There were a few things going on in Britain, I think, as well. Japan got a new prime minister around about the time Charlie Kirk was shot.
Oh, really? Oh, well.
The
Nobody
first
noticed.
first lady prime minister. Come on, that's big news.
Oh, I
Uh,
did see that. Yes.
yeah, it's, a bit of a ultra nationalist, according to some people.
Cool.
Yeah, and she proceeded to say things to upset the Chinese. So that's why the Chinese are now conducting military exercises around Taiwan
Mm.
to show their displeasure.
Is
And
that good for Japan uh, or not?
it's bad for Bitcoin
Right.
because the carry trade, the Japanese carry trade
Hmm.
helps to kind of it creates a lot of liquidity for American markets like Bitcoin and so on, and other things which can actually earn interest. Whereas in Japan, you can't earn
Mm.
interest.
Yes.
Interest rates have been notoriously very, very low for a very long
Mm.
time, which means people borrow money in Japan and then they go and invest it in your Bitcoin or your Ethereum or stocks and shares, your
Hmm.
Rocket Lab or whatever,
Hmm.
and that all helps to juice up the American asset market.
Hmm.
And now they're because of the kind of the deteriorating relationship with China. Japan is starting to become more concerned about its military prospects, and so they're sort of starting
Mm.
to think we should be investing more in Japan, in the Japanese, building up the Japanese military, and they're starting to raise interest rates and things like that. So that could have a lot of flow through to America.
Mm. Yeah. Won't raising interest rates hurt the economy, though? I mean, it's never a good thing, is it?
Um, it will actually help hurt the. It will not only hurt the economy, but the Japanese government because basically they have more debt than anybody.
Mm.
But of course, they'll find a way around that, which is what governments usually do, which is to print more money. So you can expect inflation,
Mm.
devaluation. And that's why people expect the yen to devalue against the dollar, which we also think will devalue against a lot of other currencies. The dollar will
Mm.
devalue. So even though the dollar will devalue against various currencies, the yen will devalue relative to the dollar. That's one of the things that people are talking about. So anyway, it's a very complicated picture. Um,
Yes.
so Japan could, I mean, it's swung more towards a kind of nationalist position, but the government itself is a minority government, so it's actually quite weak. So I think that Japanese politics is pretty unstable. So everything could change in 6 months. So
Is it still? Is it? Are you in tune with Japanese politics, Colin? After hanging out there for so long, or is it still like an opaque society? Because I see, these Asian countries so opaque to like outsiders.
well, yeah, there are ways to kind of analyze it and to look for to try to determine what's going on. But frankly, I'm just not that interested in Japanese
Yeah,
politics. It's just
it's the best way
just
to
just
be, I suppose.
yeah, just live there. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah. It's never good to be a non-native and then insert yourself into that country's politics, like everybody does over here in our countries. So,
yeah, like Zara Sultana, because
chunky
that's
Sultana now.
hmm?
She's putting weight on. She's chunky
Oh
Sultana
yeah.
now.
Yeah, well, she's probably stressed out by your party and trying to manage that shambolic mess. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is the other thing, because we talk about Putinism from the right, but there's also a lot of Putinism from the left as well. I've noticed. I'm very suspicious about the Green Party in the UK. Very suspicious about some of these people in the trade union movement. I remember back in March they had the new head of the RMT union. That's a transport union, Eddie Dempsey, and this is a guy who'd been over in Donbass, wearing Russian colors, and
Oh,
a
really?
hard
Wow.
left winger. So, and who knows what who's behind Zach Polanski and your party? I think these are all parties which seem to be kind of being ginned up to destabilize the Labour Party. So, like back when the Conservatives were in power in the UK, I think Reform UK were getting a lot of nefarious support, and of course they lost power thanks to Reform. The Conservative Party lost power, and then
Yes.
Labour came in. Not very popular Labour government, but with a landslide victory. And since Labour have been in, I think there's a lot of attempts from the left to eat into Labour's support and to undermine Keir Starmer. Of course, you could say that Keir Starmer needs undermining, and I think most people would agree now that Keir Starmer is not really performing very well. But I do feel that they are trying really hard to undermine him. Not they not only have one party to undermine him like they did with Reform versus the Conservatives, but they actually have two parties queued up to undermine the Labour Party. So there's definitely something funny going on in British politics on the left.
Yes, the rise of the Greens is definitely an interesting phenomenon. It seems to have come out of nowhere, and Zach Polanski is on Question Time every other night and whatever. And it's resonating with stupid young Zoomers. Basically, is this simple line from like the 1970s: tax the rich, tax the billionaires, and if you just go around saying this, it seems to resonate with stupid young Zoomers. So
Well, he's perfect. He's anti-NATO. He wants to destroy the British economy basically by
yeah,
being economically illiterate. And the Corbyn, Zara Sultana, your party aren't much better.
as much as I'm excited in one respect with like remigration and being the zeitgeist of politics here in the UK again, for the first time, this talk of this was anathema, not so long ago. We even had Keir Starmer come out earlier on this year and give his Island of Strangers speech, which was basically the most hard right anti-immigration speech of a political leader, certainly in my lifetime. So as much as I'm like encouraged by that, I look at where the UK is going over the next like few years. If we're facing getting a reform government in, this is probably actually just going to be chaos.
Yeah, another thing that should be emphasized: if you get a reform government, that's going to fuck up the United Kingdom, because I don't think Scotland will be amenable to a
No.
reform government. The SNP, they'll still have a lot of power up here, and they'll they'll definitely do something if reform get in. That'll kick things off, so to speak, and so they'll start doing all sorts of measures to
The UK
see.
is the UK is poised for like a Russia's dream scenario. It's almost as if they funded Brexit. I look back now and I think I was so naive. It's almost as if they got their wish, which was just to disrupt, make hopeless British politics into chaos for like the next decade, so that we were just all fighting amongst ourselves and were useless, because the reform is about to break the two-party political system, whatever you might think of that. Nigel Farage has 4 MPs, including himself. So where is he going to get any talent from, even if he's good intentioned and has the best plans possible? We're probably poised for chaos over the next decade.
Yeah, I mean, looking ahead, the big date in the UK, I think it's in May, isn't it? They have local elections, they have Scottish Parliament and Welsh Assembly elections. And of course, if Labour do very badly in those elections, which kind of seems
They
likely at the
will.
moment, yeah, that's going to destabilize the Labour Party. There'll be a big pressure for Starmer to step down. There'll be a leadership contest. They'll be ripping each other apart, probably. Um, the other problem is the Conservatives. I mean, Kemi Badenoch, she did quite well recently with the speech against the Labour budget.
Rachel Reeves, yeah. That
She's
was great,
she,
actually.
I know everybody loved that speech in a way. The problem was that this is a Nigerian anchor baby delivering this
Yes.
speech. So no matter how well she does, there's always going to be that thing that she's a Nigerian anchor baby holding back any positives that she can do. So that's going to keep the right wing very, very divided between Farage and the Tories. Um, and meanwhile, you've got Labour, the left wing divided between whatever's left of Labour under whoever they select as their new leader. They might go mad and put somebody like Angela Rayner in,
Yeah.
and then you'll have this Zach Polanski, and you'll have this other party, your party with Corbyn and Zultana. It's getting shambolic, British politics.
It is, yeah. It is. I heard as well, which
Hopefully by then, in Russia will have collapsed and Putin will be on a meat hook, so it won't really matter too much. But we'll see.
true, there is that possibility. But what gave me even more like pause for concern and alarm was early before this stream, I happened to tune into Nima Parvini's review of the year, and he was clapping his hands, saying, I was the architect of 0 seats for the Conservative Party. That succeeded, and now we're going to go for 0 seats for the Labour Party and do that one and bring in reform, and then we'll do 0 seats for reform. And, and I'm just thinking, well, what is this going to... This is just like a recipe for chaos.
Yeah, it's basically causing a permanent state of political churn where one party rises and then falls, and other parties rise and fall, and nobody knows who's in charge anymore, and nobody cares, and we all become depoliticized. We don't give a fuck about anything. Meanwhile, the economy is going down the tubes, countries falling apart, bits are breaking off. It's perfect. That's exactly what. I mean, this. Hopefully Putin will be looking up at this from hell, but still it will have had some massive effect on our political ecosystem.
But it is exactly what you would see, imagine Russian fingerprints to be all over, isn't it? If you only have eyes to see it.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, and there is a concrete proof as well. So
Yeah. Zero
so
suits
ho-
for everyone. That's right. Yeah.
yeah, so hopefully we can develop some kind of antibody to this level of interference. So we'll have to. I think the way to do that though is really to clamp down on social media, and we saw a little bit of that in going on in Europe, didn't we? Late in the year with this fine for Elon Musk of about 100 million euros or something, wasn't it?
Something like that.
Mm.
Are you pro that? You pro the EU doing that?
Pretty much so. I mean, basically, they just they want X to be a transparent platform, so that they can monitor it and make sure it's not doing anything dubious. And X is trying to avoid being transparent to these European authorities. Therefore, that's what generated the fine. So it's not a question of free speech; it's a question of a social media platform with an enormous amount of disruptive potential being transparent about how it runs things. I mean, in recent months, uh, X has been a complete sewer. It's
Yes.
it's
Yes, it
all this
has.
garbage propaganda. It's people I'm not even interested in being shoved into my timeline with absurd takes that have nothing and zero interest to me. And this is just going on an industrial scale now. So the whole, I mean, basically, Musk has ruined X in recent months, from what I can tell.
I hate to agree with you on this, but I do think it's gotten worse. Hopefully, it's worse before it gets better again, because there is the freedom to speak on it again. So you can do that, but you are subsumed by slop, which is incentivized by the monetary reimbursement that people have got to post slop, plus the AI age.
Yeah, the best thing he
it's
did
been a
though,
disaster.
the best thing he did though, is to reveal where all the accounts were based. So that helped a lot of people to realize what was going on. You had all these, well, it seemed to be a disproportionate number of Indian people taking
Yes.
a surprising amount of interest in British and American politics, which have nothing to do with them.
Yes. I think we're in a better position in terms of social media than we were. I mean, people forget how bad it got in like 2018, where you slightly said the wrong thing on social media and you get banned.
Yeah, tell me about it. I've several accounts taken down.
Yes.
My
So it's important to keep all
my
that in perspective,
my main
as
Twitter
bad as
is
it is.
my main Twitter is still missing in action. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right.
Right.
We
Well,
should probably finish off with a few predictions.
yes, let us do that.
I'll let you go first.
Oh, really?
Not pre-
Predictions.
yeah. Off
Well,
the cuff.
I'm notoriously bad about predictions. I'm only interested in markets now anyway.
Well, that's a
I predict
prediction.
Okay, markets. I think we're gonna have a choppy year. Definitely, we're gonna have a choppy year. So I've pulled 20% of my Rocket Lab position out of the market, and I've put it into premium bonds to be a hedge just in case, because it's looking like it's going to be choppy before it gets better. But I am predicting a generational bull run over the next 10 years through AI. So everybody knows my positions. I'm bullish Ethereum. I'm bullish. It's going to be the world computer. I'm bullish space. I'm bullish tech. But it's going to be choppy along the way.
A 10-year bull run. What's going to stop it
Yes.
then? Is that when the AI
Well,
overlords take over and have us all exterminated?
well, no, I just see this as like a 10-year build out. And look at companies like Amazon. Amazon only has an 11% margin. I've been spoken about this a few times on streams, which is an amazing company. It's like magic. You know, if you told your granddad, you know, that one day you'd be able to click a button on your phone and any product in the world would land on your doorstep 12 hours later, he'd think that you were crazy. An amazing company like Amazon only makes an 11% margin with implementation of AI through, you know, figuring out their logistics chains better and robotics and stuff. They can increase their margins like probably to 20% over the next 5 years. And this is going to be replicated across the economy. So it's bullish for companies, you know, just on efficiencies scale, and then all the advancements that it promises to give us, like the development of new medicines and inventions and things.
Yeah. What about
So
the unemployment it creates?
I think that is like 5 years out
Hmm.
uh, before we start to see that trickling in. So we'll get a better idea of that later, but it's not immediate. AI still can't be relied upon yet, and it's not necessarily we don't necessarily see that it can be relied upon in the short term yet.
So the world will be probably divided between people who own stocks and shares or crypto, and
Mm.
people who don't and have to rely upon government
Handouts.
subsidized handouts and jobs and fake jobs and welfare. So that'll be the two. That'll be the class divide probably in that case once AI really kicks in.
Far down the line, I think so. I mean, Elon Musk is not somebody that I listen to predictions on, but I do think he's right in this one aspect where he says if your job is on a screen, on a keyboard, then that job is at serious risk of being taken away and replaced by AI. All the other jobs are much further out. It's the screen jobs over the next decade that are going to go.
Yeah, so people who can basically do something that a robot or a computer can't do
Yeah.
will be okay.
Yes.
So a lot of people are going to become plumbers.
That's what they need to do. And investors, start investing in yourself now. Make a 10-year plan.
Yeah, get some assets or get a non-replicable trade.
Absolutely. It's going to be 100 years or 50 years at best before a Tesla robot can like crawl up into your attic space and find a broken pipe and, you know, fix it.
All right, let's move on to my predictions.
Go
Um,
ahead. Yeah.
yeah, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene will emerge as the front runner to replace Trump on the GOP ticket.
Oh, really? Wow.
And this will happen because JD Vance will be caught molesting a footstool.
Okay.
So that's a bit too near the
Yeah.
knuckle. A sofa's okay; people can understand the sofa, but molesting a footstool, that's out of bounds. So that'll send his career down in flames, and then Marjorie Taylor Greene will emerge as this remarkable front runner. So I think she kind of symbolizes the next level of cultural degradation that America is going to undergo.
She's a crazy Christian nationalist, though, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, like she makes Trump look sophisticated. I mean,
Right.
Trump's this garish kind of disgusting junk eating boomer, loud boomer type person with no class. But she actually makes him look a bit sophisticated. I think America's on a kind of long-term cultural slide. This is kind of ironic because on one level, America's becoming this kind of AI superpower. You have this concentration of cerebral power in through machines, but on the kind of human level, this slide is going to continue. I feel. And I think that's going to be expressed through the figures of these American politicians. Now, also, Erica Kirk is eventually her stadium Grievin Grifting tours are going to run out of steam, and I think she's going to probably arrange to have herself shot so that she can, kick off another tour in a coffin to grift for more money.
God forbid.
I mean, because this is the way America's clearly going, So I can definitely see that happening. Now, in the UK, our main problem is we have an infinite number of Bomalians coming over in small rubber dinghies from France, and we've tried to do deals with the French, and Macron's not really that interested. I mean, he says the right things. He says, yeah, sure, we will help you. And then nothing really happens, and the boats keep coming, and this is causing a major schism in British society. I think the UK government will finally solve this problem by relocating all these third world immigrants to Wales, where they won't be noticed, obviously. So those are my predictions for the year or years ahead.
Yes. I've never visited Wales. Is it as bad as you make out, Colin?
Well, you just look at some pictures of Welsh people if you're in any
Tom
doubt.
Jones,
Yeah. That type of
yeah.
person. Yeah, they're all a bit, yeah.
Axel Rudicabana.
Well, he must be Welsh, yeah, with a name like that. Yeah, unpronounceable.
Yeah. Very good, very good. Well, is that your roundup complete, Colin? Do you have anything else that you would like to add to the audience for the final episode of SJJMAS 2025?
Well, I just hope we haven't depressed people too much. I mean, I don't see any reason why we should have. You're very much an optimist, and I think I'm sort of an optimist in my own way. So there's it's the best of times, the worst of times, but there's always something going on. There's always some positives that you can take out of everything. So just enjoy the journey. It's there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, my main message is people have to start saving themselves. If you assume nobody's going to come and save you, and somebody does, then great. But if you should assume nobody is coming to save you, because that's very leftist thinking anyway. You're infected by leftism, I think, if you're waiting for the state to come and save you. So that's my, what I implore people to do. Colin's website is neocrat.blogspot.com, or one of his websites. It is linked in the description below. This is the place where you should go and read all the gossip on the distant right, if you like that, as well as edgy political takes, and things that you might not agree with.
Actually, I'm actually trying to offshore the dissident right content onto a separate blog. Well,
the Who's Who.
It's actually the Who's Who. That's got its own blog now. I don't have the URL at my fingertips, but and also it's on my Substack. I've got a Substack where I post a lot of that. I basically don't want to have it on the Neocrat site long term, because I kind of regard a lot of this content as extraneous. Because interesting as these stories are for people who have been in the dissident right, a lot of these people are becoming increasingly irrelevant, I think. And
yeah, they are.
I think it's the 100%. Issues that are important, and also the sort of general health of the political ecosystem. So I appreciate the message you're sending out, which is a very individualist one. Look after yourself and do what's best for you. Try and get ahead. That's a very good thing on an individual basis. But I also still believe that there has to be a kind of political aspect to things. We do have to clean up our political ecosystem. We do have to create healthy dissident movement which can bring new ideas to the political table, for the greater good of the country. Because a dissident movement is actually very important to a country. And the problem we've had over the last 10 years or so is that our dissident side of politics has been hacked by malign outside actors and weaponized against our country. And that should not be the case. We should be preserving our dissident political space for our own benefit. And that should be the place where new ideas come from that can then be more widely applied and deal with more serious problems that the mainstream parties are incapable of dealing with. So that's also part of my message. So I think there's no real contradiction there. I think both messages are equally possible.
Yes, I will butcher your tweet because I don't have it in front of me. I brought it up last year, but it still sticks with me, where you said the fine balancing act of a dissident is to be able to criticize your own government without becoming like a tool for for a hostile foreign power who hates you. And I often think about that, and it's it's a tricky one, and I think most people butcher the job at it currently in the dissident right, even if they're well-meaning.
Yeah, don't be manipulated.
Very good. Well, your links are in the description. I'll also add the who's who in the dissident right to those links. Colin Liddell, this has been, and ladies and gentlemen, this has been SJJMAS 2025. All good things must come to an end. I know you're all sad, but we will rise from the ashes again next year. So, Colin, thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, me too. Enjoyed it. I think we solved all the major problems in the world. Until next year.
Good night, everybody.
I've been reading books of old, the legends and the myths, Achilles and his gold.